and Confused. Look at this from thehill.com. It's time for Plan B to counter Putin. Look at that photo of Joe Biden they selected. Now this is a website whose only job is to cheerlead for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. And look at the photo they picked of Biden here. If Joe Biden was an effective leader, why would we need a Plan B? Clearly, we've got two different messages coming out of Washington, D.C. The entire Biden team is telling us that Joe Biden is perfect, and he's following a perfect plan to deal with Putin, and everything is following and smoothly and perfectly. But reality is, Joe Biden doesn't have a clue how to run the country or be a leader of the world. President Joe Biden is handling a real war in Ukraine pretty much like everyone expected he would do, very poorly. He doesn't have any ability to unite opposition to Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. He's not a natural leader, and the team that he assembled are nothing but political hacks. MSNBC anchor asks why Biden is not receiving a Zelensky bounce for his popular policies in the polls. President Biden not getting a Zelensky bounce, and when you look at the polling, it's kind of fascinating, Hockey said. The MSNBC host noted that while Biden's policies are popular, the president has repeatedly received low approval ratings. Well, maybe a reason is Joe Biden opted to enforce mask mandates through his State of the Union address of 2022, which means no one at Team Biden was following the science, and no one at Team Biden cared about the science. It was all politics to require Americans at different jobs across the country to wear masks. And why would anyone trust anything Joe Biden says about Putin, Russia, or the Ukraine, or NATO, when he lied for his entire presidency so far about the medical requirement for Americans to wear masks? Then suddenly the mask mandate ends just for his State of the Union address? Why? Because it was politics, not following the science. We all remember science magazines such as Scientific American and Nature magazine breaking with all previous policy and endorsing Joe Biden for the presidency. None of these science magazines have revoked their endorsement. Last month in February, we watched as Russia prepared to invade Ukraine, and all Joe Biden could think to do was tell Putin that he'll get to talk to Joe Biden. What an honor if he just doesn't invade. 2, he sent Kamala Harris to Europe, where she's going to speak to heads of state like they were Brett Kavanaugh accusers who needed her sympathy. 3, Biden withdrew the U.S. Embassy from Ukraine twice in an extremely humiliating, cowardly, and embarrassing way. And 4, Biden said he would slap sanctions on 2 counties of Ukraine that Putin had already sent troops in unmarked uniforms in a peacekeeping role. You're going to put sanctions on the places Putin seized. Joe Biden ran for office on how he would be tough with Putin. Joe Biden was a tough guy who would stand firm with Putin. Joe Biden only shows real anger when dealing with unarmed January 6 protesters, or Canadian truck drivers, or nurses and doctors, or school kids who aren't vaccinated or masked. Or he shows anger with police, who he has stated repeatedly as a candidate and president have to prove their innocence whenever accused of wrongdoing. Biden is a real tough guy when selecting enemies and targets of his ire on the domestic state side, while attacking his fellow Americans. But Joe turns into a pussycat when talking to Putin. Watch how Biden talks to Putin in their December video call.
Good to see you again.
In a virtual meeting over a real-life standoff, Presidents Biden and Putin started with smiles. But at the White House, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Biden delivered a firm warning.
There was no finger wagging, but the president was crystal clear about where the United States stands on all of these issues.
Good to see you again.
We take it more than seriously.
But today, Sullivan said Biden rejects that request.
He made no such commitments or concessions. He stands by the proposition that countries should be able to freely choose who they associate with.
Good to see you again.
Watching Joe Biden handle Putin is sort of like watching Neville Chamberlain securing peace in our time. So I would have questions for Joe Biden. President Biden, Antony Blinken is running all over Europe trying to line up support against Putin. But we remember when Antony Blinken repeatedly asked the victorious Taliban terrorists of Afghanistan to form an inclusive government with transgenders and LGBTQ communities within Afghanistan. This is the man who's in charge of lining up political and military support against Putin. President Biden, did you consult President Obama on what to do with Putin? Did you ask President Obama to fly to Europe to advise our allies? John Kerry is a former Secretary of State. So is Hillary Clinton. Why didn't you send both of them to Europe in that capacity? In the same regard, why didn't you send former President George W. Bush along with former President Bill Clinton to Ukraine to stand firm with the Ukrainian president? Can't you even line up political parties in the United States to support your efforts? President Biden, did you say anything to Putin in your December 7th, 2021 video phone call to set him on this course? If the answer is no, please provide a transcript or video of your conversation with Putin. The conversation with Putin was reported to have lasted 2 hours. What did you say in those 2 hours that convinced Putin the time to invade was now under your presidency? And if Putin is Trump's best friend, why didn't Putin invade Ukraine when he had his best friend in the White House? Can't answer that one, can you? Why didn't Kamala Harris understand her mistake when she said in a speech that you were all united behind Ukraine as a member of NATO? Ukraine is not a member of NATO, but her statement was crystal clear. She did not misspeak.
So I will say what I know we all say, and I will say over and over again. The United States stands firmly with the Ukrainian people in defense of the NATO alliance.
Bruh.
And she never realized her mistake during her speech or after. Who corrected her? Who had the job of falsifying her White House transcript of that speech? Did anyone think to use the Russian hotline with Putin over this statement, which could cause another war? Is anyone at the Biden White House calling the Russian hotline? Has any reporter asked this, by the way? There's so many questions along these lines. When was the last time anyone at the Biden White House spoke to anyone on the Russian side of the hotline? What is Biden's plan for getting our American astronaut down from the International Space Station? Russia has hinted he's going to be left there. When you said you personally called the major partners in NATO, what countries did you consider too minor to personally call? Is there any reason to insult any member country of NATO with such a stupid boast?
The idea that NATO is not going to be united, I don't buy. I've spoken to every major NATO leader.
Why insult half of NATO by boasting you only wanted to speak on the phone with the major members? Maybe one of those minor members has the contribution needed to save Ukraine and beat Putin? Ever think of that? And if you have not, why are you qualified for the job of the presidency? A few more questions for President Biden. Did Barack Obama really try to talk you out of running in 2019? And was he correct by 2022? Remember when a president risked his life for peace? A tale of two presidents. First, we have Joe Biden this week.
And now, second big reason for inflation is Vladimir Putin and gas prices. Not a joke.
Remember when Donald Trump stepped across the border into North Korea, unplanned and unaccompanied, to speak directly to Kim Jong-un about peace? No Secret Service, no American aides, nothing. Trump risked his life in the hands of a brutal communist thug in the interests of peace. When will Joe Biden put his body on the line for peace? He should offer to go to Moscow. He should go to Ukraine's capital and dare Putin to bomb him. Biden is all talk, but I remember when an American president stood tall for peace and didn't cower blaming others for his problems. There's many examples of heroism in this horrible war. The woman saying, "No war, the state media is lying to you," is the producer at this Russian news network. She will probably face a 15-year prison sentence from Vladimir Putin directly. Notice here on the Twitter page, they set it to age-restricted content because Twitter apparently doesn't want to risk offending communists. Remember the Moscow Peace Festival from 1989? We're not going to see anything like this again in our lifetimes, or at least for the next decade. And it's a shame because many Russians do stand in moral opposition to this unnecessary war and land grab. A world at peace when Republicans are in the presidency. This doesn't happen when you have fatuous Democrats running our country and leading the world as the world's bastion of freedom. Joe Biden and his team despise America. They hate America for being the world's last superpower. And it's their sincere hope that other countries replace America as the superpower for the 21st century. When you look back at the recent history of our world, it's clear that the Democratic Party wishes to see communist empires transplant our own as the next superpowers and world leaders. Fox News photojournalist Pierre Zakrzewski was killed while working alongside Fox News State Department correspondent Benjamin Hall when incoming fire hit their vehicle outside of Kiev. Pierre Zakrzewski was an absolute legend at this network, and his loss is devastating, Fox News said. People like this are my heroes. Journalists on the ground in Ukraine are my heroes, and always will be. Those who place their lives at the utmost danger to report the facts and to show the truth to the world will always be my heroes. He died in the highest duty to mankind to report on the truth. Him and unfortunately many others on a growing list. At the start of the War on Terror, Donald Rumsfeld said that you go to war with the equipment that you have. In this case, in 2022, we are going to World War III with the leadership that we have, that being Pelosi, Harris, and Biden. God help us all, because the death and destruction in the country of Ukraine may not end at its borders. Thank you.
The old ways are done. You'd stand giving speeches while Asgard falls.
You are a vain, greedy, cruel boy!
And you are an old man and a fool!
Through your arrogance and stupidity, you've opened these peaceful realms and innocent lives to the horror and desolation of war!